How's it going, people? I was actually going to make a different video this week before I saw an email from one of you lot that really caught my attention. Back in March 2020, I dropped the 7th episode of Subscriber Showdown, and the first car I mentioned was Brad's BMW M2, an absolute beaut with some simple but effective modifications. Well, it turns out that in April 2021, Brad's M2 was stolen by force in broad daylight while he was sitting in the car. And though fewer cars were stolen in 2020 to 2021 than the 4 previous years, car thefts in general have been on the rise since lows in 2013, and the easing of lockdown led to a 32% increase, so people who are committing these crimes appear to be back out there and cracking on with some stealing. Brad was kind enough to offer some helpful advice from someone who's actually been through this ordeal, and I asked him if I could share his story and advice with you lot to hopefully prevent some more people from losing their cars in the same way that he did. But before I do that, I'll first qualify the issue. If you find this video useful, please do hit the like button, and if you had any experience or have any other suggestions on how to keep your car safe from theft, please do drop them in the comments. If you haven't already, do remember to hit the subscribe button as well for 2 weekly car videos, but without further ado, let's get into the video. So before we begin, I just want to say that I'm not trying to make this video to scare you or overstate an issue. My simple goal is to share what Brad told me and add the additional research that I've done to make sure you're making an informed decision about your car. I'm assuming if you're watching this video and you're subscribed to the channel, you're probably a car person like myself, and the last thing you want is to lose your beloved whip to some nasty waste men. According to the DVLA, 74,769 cars and motorbikes were recorded as being stolen in 2020, which is basically 205 every day or 1 every 7 minutes. This is down pretty significantly from the early 2000s, which was up in the hundreds of thousands, and down on previous years anyway as a result of the lockdowns, but as I said, we're now seeing these increase. In total, there are approximately 33 million cars and motorbikes in the UK, so effectively 0.23% of all cars in the UK were stolen last year. Now that you know the figures are actually quite small, you can stop panicking if that's where your brain was going. It's highly unlikely that your car is going to be stolen. However, if you're one of the unlucky few that does happen to have their car stolen, it's a sad story knowing that just 28% of all cars stolen are also recovered and returned to their owners. For this reason, it's up to you to work out your risk appetite and decide whether it's worth spending the money to protect your car. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that the average prices of cars stolen each month ranges pretty significantly, but it's generally anywhere from £13,000 to £31,000 according to the many articles I read. So if you're driving something cheap and cheerful, this might be less of an issue. This is in part due to the difficulty of actually selling a stolen car in an untraceable way, so the values of these cars absolutely plummet for the thieves. According to AX's investigation into the black market for cars like Brad's M2, which you might get 30k for used normally, will only sell for around 2k on the black market. So there's no point in stealing an already cheap car, as the returns for thieves wouldn't be worth it. Anyway, hopefully you're not too scared at this point and still willing to hear Brad's story, so let's get into it. On a random day at 10 AM, he pulled up on a nice residential street outside some houses and was waiting in the car for his girlfriend to get in. At this point, he was approached by surprise as the thieves opened his door, pushed him out, and the car was taken from him, never to be seen again by him. He mentioned to me that he was very fortunate that neither himself or his girlfriend were harmed, as many people encounter far more aggressive situations than they did, but it's still not an enjoyable situation by any means, and they were, I assume, quite shaken by it, as anyone would be. He of course reported it to the police immediately, and in the months that followed he learned a few things the hard way. Number 1, this could happen to literally anyone at any time of day. If the theft is premeditated or the thieves have a slick routine that they follow, it's difficult to combat it in the moment. Number 2, despite his M2 being connected to satellites, BMW couldn't actually locate the car, and the BMW Connected Services app also didn't work once the car was stolen, as presumably the thieves knew to deactivate its internal tracking. Number 3, his back to invoice gap insurance, which effectively pays the difference between an insurer's market value settlement for a car and the original finance or invoice price paid for the car if you have a total loss, didn't actually cover the full deficit, despite being a well-known and de facto 5-star insurer. And number 4, as he had his car documents like the invoice and V5C in the car, the thieves had a ton of information about him and his car that would also help them to sell it on. With these problems in mind, I want to talk about the advice he's given to everyone on how to not have this situation themselves, as well as some other advice I found through research. So first and foremost, don't keep those important documents in your car. If you're ever pulled over by police and they ask you to produce your documents and you can't find them on your phone, you should be able to take the documents to their station at a later date. If you don't have the documents in the car, it makes it a bunch more difficult and the thieves will struggle to sell the car for as much cash. As mentioned, get good back to invoice gap insurance, particularly if you have an expensive car. Otherwise you could be significantly out of pocket when the insurance really won't cost you very much. Brad apparently paid just £180 for his 3 years of cover on the M2. Get the word out that the car has been stolen very quickly. The quicker you can get people to know that the car's been stolen and what it looks like and what the registration plate is, the quicker they can start to react and try and find it. That obviously includes telling the police and giving a general location as to where it was stolen. Install an aftermarket tracker that is difficult to tamper with. When you get insurance quotes and it has that Thatchum's tracker device option, there are plenty of Thatchum's approved devices for less than £400, which have a really decent recovery rate, upwards of 96% in some cases. It's an expensive initial investment, but great peace of mind, especially if you've bought a car worth plenty of cash. In addition to a tracker, you could get an immobilizer. I have one for the MX-5 which came with the car, and I promise that if you haven't got the key fob, the car isn't starting. There are some properly amazing ones out there too, which will block your engine from starting even if the thieves swap the ECU out to negate this. Again, these can be expensive, up to £500 for some of the most highly recommended ones, so up to you to work out if it's worth it. Alongside both of those, maybe get a proper alarm system if your car doesn't already have one. The one on my MX-5 likes to go off even when a little bit of wind hits it, so maybe look for one that's a little bit less aggressive, but either way it's a classic way of keeping your car safe and annoying both the thieves and the neighbours. Some cars do actually automatically lock the doors when you start driving and don't unlock until you switch the engine off, but in Brad's case, he left the doors unlocked while sitting there waiting for his girlfriend. A simple habit to get into is locking your car doors when you're waiting in it. I know I personally don't do this, but I really should, and it stops a thief having that element of surprise by opening your door and GTAing you out of the car. It gives you that split second you might need to put the car into gear and drive away. I couldn't find the key stats on this, but the tracker company Wayne noted that 92% of cars stolen with their tracking device fitted were taken as a result of keyless entry and start-stop vulnerabilities in 2019, so there is likely a very high percentage of cars that are taken from homes. In some cases, cars are even taken by thieves breaking into homes, stealing car keys and taking the car away, which is pretty nuts. Either way, there are some other things you can do to combat this. An easy one is a visual deterrent, like a steering lock. It's a bit of faff to remove every time you get into the car, but it's likely to put someone off trying to nick the car in the first place. On top of this, make sure you keep any valuables out of sight or remove them from your car. This should be pretty simple stuff. Also, try to park your car in a well-lit area if possible. If you live somewhere that has CCTV either from a shop or a neighbour nearby, or even your own home, it might be worth parking in sight of it. This isn't necessarily always an easy thing to do, but just something to consider. Whether you have keyless entry or not, keep them away from windows and doors, and if they're keyless, maybe consider a Faraday pouch which blocks signal. These are pretty cheap to get a hold of, so not that deep. I've actually linked to some very highly rated ones on Amazon using an affiliate link in the description down below if you fancy checking them out. And two final pieces of advice that Brad gave me that I thought were helpful. Firstly, if you're in a situation where your car is being taken before your very eyes, don't be a hero. That car may be your pride and joy or something you absolutely require to get to work or do something important, but risking your life over it isn't worth it. Secondly, ironic coming from a car YouTuber who shares his life with cars on the channel, but be careful with how you share things about your car on social media. Don't make it obvious where your car is parked and where your keys are. It's a pretty simple point again. I really do hope that Brad's experience in these points helps some of you and assist in decreasing the number of car thefts taking place in the UK. If you know anyone who needs to see this, please do share it with them. I hope you liked this video. Please do hit the like button if you did enjoy it and subscribe as well if you're new. Massive thanks to the patrons as always for their support, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Listen.